Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I am Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. Hey, for those of you who regularly geek out on the channel, you know one of the things that we try to stay true to is that we're going to just try to keep things down the middle. We're not going to tell you how to think, but we are going to give you all the stuff to think about. And so when a fantastic piece of legislation comes along and we realize that it is only that, just an idea, just a piece of legislation, just a bill, well, then we always have to keep it down the middle and talk about what's the likelihood that this is actually going to become law. Well, we're about to try something once again. I know it's something that many of you are super excited about, and for good reason. But let's have a realistic talk about it. Let's talk about what is the likelihood that this could really happen, because here we go again. So today, let's spend a few minutes and let's talk about the bill to abolish the ATF. Okay, listen, before we get going too far down the road, we're going down. Let's remember that this video is being brought to us by the Sonoran Desert Institute. That's right, launch your career today in the firearm industry. Start arming yourself today with education, and most importantly, start defending the inalienable rights of millions of Americans nationwide, all through the most powerful act there is, which of course is education. Listen, the Sonoran Desert Institute has a degree, class, certification, anything that you may be looking for to get your career started. So for more information, check them out in the description box below or just visit them at sdi.edu. Okay, America, here's what we're talking about. We're talking about Missouri Republican Representative Eric Burlison, who is now claiming that he will be proposing a bill to abolish the ATF. Now, even though he's made the big announcement and he's already done the press release and all that, we do not have any copy, any rough draft of the bill whatsoever, which means it has not been introduced, which means it does not have a number, which means it is only theory now. So I guess we will also talk in theory because this has been tried before, okay? And I want you to understand that it's been tried before because if you might recall, Representative Matt Gaetz had a bill to abolish the ATF. One of the co-sponsors of that bill was Representative Burlison in this case. Now, where did Matt Gaetz's bill go? Well, it was introduced way back late in 2022. It went to the House Judiciary Committee on January 17th of 2023, and it has never been heard from since. And despite the fact that they've sent out multiple search parties looking for this piece of legislation, no one has seemed to be able to find it anywhere. And the reason for that is that when this bill was introduced, even though there could have possibly mathematically been enough votes to get it out of the House, it was DOA when it got to the democratically controlled Senate, and therefore the bill went nowhere. But you sit there and you go, okay, well, but wait a second. Now the numbers are different, aren't they? Yes, they are, but not different enough. Because let's have just a significant reality check about, number one, what is the likelihood that you could actually get that piece of legislation passed out of both chambers? Okay, well, number one, you have an ever so slight majority in the House, and that would require every single Republican to absolutely stay home on that issue. That is, be in favor of a complete abolition of the ATF. So if we start doing the math there, that's kind of already pretty long odds. But then, even if you got it out of the House and over to the Senate, even though there is a majority in the Senate, there is not a large enough majority to override a filibuster. There's not anywhere close enough to that. The margin in the Senate is incredibly slim, which means that in many ways, it's still DOA, dead on arrival, the minute it gets to the Senate. And listen, I recognize that there is no federal agency that deserves to be abolished more than the ATF, especially based on their performance over the last few years. And yeah, with the creation of the Department of Government Efficiency and this administration's desire to really strip down government to its essential services, yeah, I think that that fits well in line with what that particular department is trying to do. But I want you to have a couple of other realities to think about as well. And I want to give you this caveat first, okay? I am not advocating for the abolition of the ATF, nor am I advocating against the abolition of the ATF. I have my own personal opinion on it, but I'm not sharing that with you because I want all of you to come to your personal opinions. I just want to give you some stuff to think about. Okay, number one, this is politics. And so therefore we do have to view this move through a political lens. The Trump administration, the incoming Trump administration, ran very heavily on tough on crime, law and order, restoring sanity to the criminal justice system, all of which were very, very effective campaign points. Does then absolutely disbanding a large federal law enforcement agency, is that consistent with the campaign platform? Okay. Or does this get spun by mainstream media? And again, we all can roll our eyes at mainstream media and for various good reasons. Okay. But does this suddenly become a GOP-led defund the police movement? Let us also remember that while many of us who are deep, deep into the 2A community understands the nefarious and sinister ways in which the ATF conducted its business, the average American voter and the average American swing voter, okay, and that was critical to this president's success, they don't understand that. So when they see a large federal law enforcement agency being abolished, completely unaware of their history, well, the perception to them is going to be much different, isn't it? If ATF were to be abolished, then anytime we have some crazy incident involving a firearm, mainstream media will of course say, well, of course this wouldn't have happened if they hadn't abolished the ATF, which you and I both know is complete and total BS. But these are the political considerations that this administration has to take into account with this type of legislation. So those are the harsh realities of where we are both mathematically between the House and the Senate and where we sit politically and what this administration has to think of politically. So what's a more realistic thing? Well, number one, you could have some legislation that could be passed that would more definitively define what ATF's roles and powers are. But in many ways, it would be a mere restatement of what's been already placed in federal legislation. Now, you could use far more definitive language, much more clear enunciation of what their rights and obligations are, and perhaps you could whittle away at a few of their functions. But the likelihood of that type of legislation, again, making it out of both the House and the Senate, also becomes just about as much remote as what we're talking about here. Instead, and this is probably the most realistic good case scenario, America, is that the ATF is going to be put back in the garage. And what do I mean by that? Well, it starts with the appointment of an ATF director that understands what ATF's true role is, which also does include alcohol and tobacco and explosives, okay? Number two, they are clearly there to stop criminal elements. And candidly, if you take a look at the creation of the ATF, they were really there to enforce tax codes. What I mean by putting the ATF back in the garage is get them off the backs of the lawful and responsible gun-owning Americans. Nobody in the ATF ever signed up to go after those people. That also means you have to get off the backs of the millions and millions of lawful and responsible FFLs nationwide whose main purpose is to ensure that liberty survives within the United States through the exercise of the Second Amendment. And this zero tolerance policy and all of these policies created out of this fake rogue gun dealer problem needs to go back into the garage as well. So the bottom line, America, is this. If you are waiting for the day in which a piece of legislation sits before President Trump for him to sign, which would absolutely abolish the existence of the ATF, I think you're going to be waiting a very, very long time. Listen, we'll go ahead and link up some of the resources that relied upon in making this video down below so that you guys can geek out on it for yourself. I'd love to hear what you think, not so much about what you want to see done with the ATF. I think I know exactly how most of you feel about that. But what is the likelihood that it could actually be done through some act of legislation? Okay, if you got any other questions about this or anything else related to what's left of our Second Amendment rights, you guys should know how to get a hold of Washington gun law by now. But if you don't, that's okay. That information's down there in the description box. If you got an idea for a video that we should be doing around here, you click on that link right there. You let us know. If you want to subscribe to our monthly newsletter, the ability to do all of that is down there in the description box. And then finally, and most importantly, America, let's remember that part of being the lawful and responsible gun owner, like we talk about all the time here, is to know what the law is in every situation and how it applies to you in any instance that you may find yourself. Until next time, thanks for watching and stay safe.